I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
You've got the new James Bond, the Hollywood legend who portrayed Han Solo and Indiana Jones, the director who launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and a promising premise. That movie's gonna be amazing, right? Right? Even with an impressive roster of talent and a high concept that couldn't possibly get any higher, Cowboys and Aliens was barely a blip on the pop culture radar. In fact, you'd be forgiven if you even forgot it existed in the decades since it arrived in theaters in the summer of 2011. Why did this expensive sci-fi western fail to make an impression? Put on your chaps and favorite Stetson hat as we find out what the fuck happened to this movie. Cowboys and Aliens is one of those projects that kicked around Hollywood for ages before finally getting made, initially beginning development way back in 1997. At that time, Universal and DreamWorks jointly purchased the rights to a concept by former Malibu Comics president Scott Mitchell Rosenberg, who established Platinum Studios to help produce the film. The idea was first pitched as being based on a graphic novel, one that wouldn't actually get published until nearly 10 years later. The movie rights were acquired based only on one illustration of a cowboy and a spaceship, and the vague idea of the genre mashup implied by the name. The Nutty Professor and Ace Ventura When Nature Calls screenwriter Steve Odekirk was hired to write and direct the movie, but he departed in 1998 to rejoin Jim Carrey on a remake of The Incredible Mr. Limpet, which never actually materialized. After his departure, the film then languished in development hell for years. Sony acquired the rights but wrestled with the tone. Initial drafts had included broad comedy, but that direction was abandoned completely after the infamous 1999 Will Smith flop Wild Wild West.
I have no idea, Dr. Lovelace. I'm just as stumped as you are.
During this early span, actors like Jackie Chan, Chuck Norris, Kurt Russell, Brendan Fraser, Bruce Willis, and even Mr. T were attached at various points, along with Jumanji director Joe Johnston and Ron Underwood, who had directed Tremors and City Slickers.
He's behind me, isn't he?
By 2006, Rosenberg had finally completed Cowboys and Aliens as a graphic novel, and a year later, Universal and DreamWorks reacquired the rights to make the film. By the time the finished movie would be released, Paramount, Reliance Entertainment, Relativity Media, and Imagine Entertainment would also join the party as distributors and financiers. That's quite a production posse. In 2008, Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr., entered negotiations to play the lead character, who at the time was named Zeke Jackson, an ex-Union soldier and notorious gunslinger. While filming Iron Man 2 in 2009, Downey told his collaborator Jon Favreau about the project, and the filmmaker became interested. Not long after that, it was official. Favreau and Downey would reunite to make Cowboys and Aliens their next movie. But in early 2010, the project suffered a major blow when Downey exited to star in Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes sequel instead.
I agree, it's not my best disguise, but let me do.
Just weeks later, 007 himself, Daniel Craig, was cast in the lead role, partly for his likeness to the Magnificent Seven star Steve McQueen. The character was renamed and his backstory was hastily rewritten as Jake Lonergan, an amnesiac outlaw with a strange futuristic bracelet on his wrist. While Craig has plenty of leading man qualities, it's hard not to imagine what kind of mischievous magnetism Downey would have brought to the role. By April 2010, Harrison Ford was lassoed for the role of antagonistic cattleman Woodrow Dollarhide. Despite the movie's period setting, Ford was initially reluctant to wear a cowboy hat, considering his famous character known for sporting a trademark fedora, but ultimately he relented and agreed to a big ol' hat. In the spring of 2010, Olivia Wilde was cast in the crucial role of mysterious nomad Ella. Daniel Craig had suggested his Casino Royale co-star Eva Green for the part, but she was not interested. The remaining cast was filled out with talent like Clancy Brown, Paul Dano, Walton Goggins, Abigail Spencer, Adam Beach, and Sam Rockwell, whose character was rewritten from a towering Mexican to something obviously more Sam Rockwellian. To also help establish the tone, texture, and overall aesthetic of a classic Western, DreamWorks producer Steven Spielberg privately screened several films for the cast and crew. Titles included Stagecoach, The Searchers, and Destry Rides Again. and Spielberg also showed his own Close Encounters of the Third Kind as another reference point for a desert-set alien visitation film. It was also Spielberg's suggestion to feature a primary alien villain, and he also recommended that Jake and the female lead should kiss during the climax. Obviously, Jon Favreau did not disagree with one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, for whatever that was worth. At this stage of development, Scott Mitchell Rosenberg didn't seem to think any sort of trouble was afoot, saying, "Jon Favreau's bringing his own talent and vision with the adaptation, but at the same time it remains true to what I was really trying to get at in the original story." But as for that original story, well, it had been chewed up and regurgitated by at least 11 other screenwriters in the time after Odenkirk left, including David Hayter, Jeffrey Boehm, Thomas Dean Donnelly, and Joshua Oppenheimer. Transformers and Star Trek writers Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orci teamed with Damon Lindelof to assemble what would be the eventual screenplay, although the script remained in a state of flux all through production. About the project's tonal challenges, Orci cited Unforgiven as a touchpoint, but admitted that they struggled to really find a sweet spot, or as he put it, the exact right point where a Western and a sci-fi movie can really shake hands without it seeming unnatural. Armed with a considerable budget that ultimately reached $163 million, Cowboys and Aliens officially started principal photography in June 2010 at Albuquerque Studios in New Mexico. At the time, 3D was all the rage after the game-changing impact of James Cameron's record-shattering box office hit Avatar. DreamWorks adamantly insisted that Favreau shoot the film in 3D to take advantage of those premium ticket prices. But the director believed that Westerns should be shot on film rather than the required 3D digital video. Favreau stuck to his guns, shooting an anamorphic 35mm, and also dismissed the notion of a 3D post-conversion. Unfortunately, the majority of pre-production had been spent with the assumption that the film would be shot in 3D, which ended up being a massive waste of effort and money. Despite remaining true to the director's vision, this decision caused a rift between Favreau and the involved studio honchos that only increased the pressure for the movie to perform well at the box office. The landscapes and western topography of New Mexico were selected for the iconic Plaza Blanca, used for movies like City Slickers, 3:10 to Yuma, and Young Guns. The entire shoot lasted 3 months and officially wrapped in September. Overt references to Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark and Close Encounters of the Third Kind were appropriated, including Lonergan jumping onto a moving vehicle from his horse, and the aliens introduced by the blinding lights on their spacecraft. Favreau had said his goal was to find the intersection of two genres. If you do it right, it honors both, and it becomes interesting and clever and a reinvention, instead of just a retread or remake or sequel or reboot of a film you've seen before. Well, it was an honorable aim that just missed the bullseye. The concept and appearance of the alien invaders was partly based on the gold-obsessed Anunnaki gods depicted in Zecharia Sitchin's vision of the Babylonians, with heads inspired by sea turtles that Favreau had once seen on a Hawaiian vacation. The necessary digital effects work proved costly, with ILM joined by at least half a dozen other FX houses to bring the aliens to life. The original intent was to make creatures that were cool and captivating, similar to the prawns from Neil Blomkamp's District 9. But the decision to shoot in flat 2D anamorphic widescreen presented difficulties in convincingly depicting 10-foot-tall alien monsters in the same frame as normal-sized human beings. Without the freedom to reframe certain shots as they would with digital footage, additional time and money was then needed to film outdoor areas to accommodate the effects work. Presenting the aliens in bright sunlight also posed a challenge for the various digital artists, and additional computer augmentation was needed for the alien lassos after response to the first trailer noted they were too difficult to see. Speaking of that initial movie trailer, the marketing was one of the movie's biggest miscalculations. At the Cowboys and Aliens presentation at San Diego Comic-Con in summer 2010, Jon Favreau stated the movie would be a straight-faced blend of John Ford and Sergio Leone westerns mixed with the scary sci-fi of Alien and Predator. But when the first trailer premiered a few months later, audiences giggled over the disparity between the movie's cartoonish title and the dead-serious nature of the footage. Universal's head of marketing went into damage control mode, stating that the trailer was, quote, the first very public step in reconciling the tone of the movie with the more immediate effect of the title on its own. That's an interesting way to put it. A more action-packed trailer was cut for a highly expensive Super Bowl TV ad on February 6, 2011, which did seem to spike interest in the movie. But even with a pricey marketing blitz with high-profile tie-ins, the campaign took another hit when the two world-famous male leads refused to promote the film with much enthusiasm. The notably cantankerous Harrison Ford publicly stated that he only made the movie for the money, and said that at first he had violently launched the script across the room after reading 30 pages. For a movie dependent on the crossover appeal of a sci-fi western and its A-list stars, Ford's candid statements probably didn't help. There was also the improbable cinematic trend that the planet had already been invaded several times in 2011 before Cowboys and Aliens could even ride into theaters. With the genre saturated and potential moviegoers reaching alien fatigue, the movie's tonal inconsistency was clearly just one of its problems. Cowboys and Aliens was released in North American theaters on July 29, 2011, losing to The Smurfs on its opening day. Despite all the marketing efforts, audiences still seemed confounded by the lack of humor suggested by its title. And indeed, aside from Walton Goggins' goofy outlaw, the movie is as dry as the desert where it takes place. And critics were also generally unimpressed, using terms like ponderous, mind-numbingly dull, and a dour affair that fails to capture the spirit of either genre. The movie did finally limp to $100 million domestically and $175 million worldwide, but considering its exorbitant cost, it was later labeled one of the biggest box office bombs ever made. Jon Favreau later summed up his own feelings on a 2013 Marc Maron podcast, saying, "It was seen as the big dog, and we felt we were underdogs with how obscure the material was. The name made everyone think it was going to be a comedy, and maybe it would have been better served with a different vision." As Universal President Ron Meyer said in the aftermath of the expensive misfire, "It took a group of smart and talented people to come up with a mediocre movie. It just happens." And what happened was a combination of audience expectations over a deceptive title, mishandled marketing, the general uncertainty of fusing popular genres, a lengthy and costly development, a whole lot of chefs in the kitchen, a filmmaker at odds with his executives, and a story that never really comes together in a satisfying way. Maybe Cowboys and Aliens just don't mix. Thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Videos channel, tell your friends who like this sort of content, and turn on the bell to receive notifications for all our latest videos. We are an independent company, and we appreciate your support.